Hi, I want to talk in this session about how that Matthew 24, which we've repeatedly proved would come to pass in the days in which the people to whom Jesus spoke were still living. He said, this generation, he said, the first thing he talked about in the chapter, after telling in chapter 23, the people of Jerusalem that their house would be left desolate or the temple would be destroyed. The first thing he talks about is the buildings of the temple. And the disciples show him the buildings of the temple. They just heard him say their house would be left desolate. It so shocked the disciples. They'd never heard him talk like this before. So they asked him, when shall those things be? And the antecedent to when these things shall be is the temple destruction. Everything he said in chapter 23 about their house being left desolate. Jerusalem, Jerusalem. Jesus said, I would have protected you as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you wouldn't let me. All the wrath from Abel's death right through to Zacharias, son of Barachias, the guiltiness for all of those murders is going to be heaped and thrown upon you. So they said, when are these things going to be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And the world means age, the end of the age, not the end of the earth. And his coming was a coming in destruction. And he said in Matthew 24 and 34, all these things I've just outlined, going right back, including the temple destruction, would happen in one generation. So we know all those things happened in the first century if the temple destruction happened then. Matthew 24, we clearly see was first century fulfillment. Now, you're going to be amazed because every single thing Jesus said in Matthew 24, he repeated it in the same sequence in Revelation 6. Watch this. Jesus went out. He departed from the temple. The first thing Jesus answers them is, take heed that no man deceive you. Many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. So notice the first thing he mentions is deception. People, false Christs, and so forth. When you go to Revelation 6, the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow. And a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. I am going to show you that this white horse has to be false Christs. You're going to see that as we go along. But suffice it to say at this point, the first thing Jesus mentioned in answer to their questions was, in Matthew 24, was there going to be deceivers, false Christs. And the first seal in Revelation 6 is a white horse. And somebody sat on him with a bow, a crown was given to him, he went forth conquering and to conquer. False Christs. And notice it's white. The devil comes like an angel of light. And white does not always mean an actuality of righteousness. The devil comes like an angel of light, so he's exposing something here. But wait and see how the rest compares, because it's undeniable the further we go with this. You might remember that Jesus even talked to the Pharisees and called them whited sepulchres. White. White does mean righteousness, but a whited sepulchre is a fake righteousness. It's counterfeit. Devil coming like an angel of light. The second thing Jesus talked about, you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Revelation 6, the second thing, the second seal was opened. The second beast told John to come and see, and there went out another horse that was red, and power was given unto him thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given him a great sword. This is war. And what's the second thing Jesus say in Matthew 24? Wars and rumors of wars. And then it even says in verse 7, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And so that is part of the wars. That is part of the second sign Jesus gave. Then the third one, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. What's the third seal in Revelation chapter 6? He'd opened the third seal. I heard the third beast come and say, come and see. I beheld a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. That is an incredibly expensive amount of money for a measure of wheat and for a measure of barley in that day. And that's because famine, the black horse represents famine, the third thing Jesus spoke about in Matthew 24. And then after that, the fourth thing, they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you. You shall be hated for all, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Death, being killed. It said, many shall be offended, shall betray one another, hate one another, and so forth. And then when you go to Revelation 6, the fourth seal is the same thing. He had opened the fourth seal. I heard the fourth beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and look, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. Power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with a sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. The very same sequence in which Jesus is talking. So far, Jesus said false Christ. Then he said wars and rumors of wars. Famines and pestilences, and then they'll be delivering you up to kill you. The seals, a white horse, going forth to conquer, false Christs. A red horse, wars and rumors of wars. Famines and pestilences with the horsemen holding a balance and such incredibly high amounts of money for small amounts of food. That's the third thing Jesus said. And then the pale horse, the fourth thing, they'll deliver up to kill you, Jesus said. And here we see the exact same sequence, but it's not finished yet. Keep going through Matthew 24. And many false Christs shall rise and shall deceive many, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Now notice he says a note in the midst of all this. He that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. There's a parallel to that in Revelation's 5th seal. Because when you get to the 5th seal, when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God. That was the 4th seal, people being slain. And these are talking about believers being slain. They're under the altar. And the reason they're under the altar is because when a sacrifice was killed on the altar, the blood ran underneath. And just like that blood flowing underneath the life of the flesh, these souls were underneath the altar. They had died. They had given their lives. And for the testimony which they had. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And remember what Jesus said as the 5th item in Matthew 24? He that endures unto the end, the same shall be saved. White robes were given unto every one of them. It was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. See? Hold on. Now, these are people that have died and are told to hold on. And Jesus was talking to people living and said, hold on, endure to the end. Some of you are going to be killed, though, but endure. But the same language, the same understanding is clearly there. And now, the 6th thing that Jesus spoke about. He said in verse 14, the gospel of the kingdom should be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. And by the way, go to Colossians. The gospel has gone into all the world, just like Jesus said it would happen here. And by the way, look at this in Acts chapter 17 and 6. When they found them not, they drew Jason and certain brethren unto the rulers of the city, crying, these that have turned the world upside down have come hither. The church had turned the world upside down, and that was in the book of Acts. And you might say, well, that's not the whole world. Well, they referred to it as the world, and that's exactly what Jesus was referring to too. You might say, well, it hasn't gone to all the world yet. Well, Jesus didn't mean the whole world like you and I think. All through the Bible, when it talks about the whole world, it's talking about the then known world or the Roman Empire. And then it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Now, I showed you in a previous lesson that these celestial phenomena is speaking about lights out for a kingdom. Go back and see that lesson. Lights out for a kingdom. It's not talking about literal signs in the skies, sun, moon, and stars. It's talking about lights out because the sun was the ruler of the day in Genesis. The moon was the ruler of the night, and flags of the world have suns and stars and moons on them to show the kingdoms. And Sir Isaac Newton wrote about this, and we quoted him in a previous lesson, where this was speaking of political catastrophes, political lights out, as the heavens represented the rulership and the earth represented the servants in a kingdom. But notice, he talks about these celestial phenomena. Let's go see the sixth seal in Revelation chapter 6. And when he had opened the sixth seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair. The moon became as blood. The stars of heaven fell unto the earth as a fig tree casts her untimely figs. So notice that. Stars of heaven, sun and the moon, just like Jesus said in the same sequence in Matthew chapter 24. Now let's go back to Matthew 24. It doesn't stop there. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then he says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. And people say the fig tree is Israel. And when Israel becomes a nation, then you know we're in the last days. That's not saying anything about that. Verse 33 is never read by these people who propose that when they use verse 32 to propose their future coming of Jesus. And Jesus is coming in the future, but that's not what this passage is talking about. It's a coming in AD 70. Likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Not when you see Israel become a nation, when you see all these things. In other words, go back to verse 1. Read about the temple destruction. Read about not one stone being left unturned. Read about the 4 seals, the 4 horsemen that are in Revelation 6. Read about all of these things, and that's what he's saying. When you see these things, like the fig tree putting forth leaves, you know summer's nigh. When you see these things, the end is near. What things? The fig leaves represent the signs that Jesus had just listed. It has absolutely nothing to do with Israel becoming. Where did that ever come from? Like, that's ridiculous. But just like he talked about the coming of Jesus in the clouds, destruction on Jerusalem, and like a fig tree putteth forth leaves, the sixth thing not only includes the celestial phenomena, which represents a kingdom going out, but it says, as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Just in the same sequence, Jesus spoke of these things. And then the heavens departed as a scroll when it's rolled together. Every mountain and island were moved to other places. Biblical imagery, not literal events to happen. And the kings of the earth, the mighty men, the great men, the rich men, the chief, every one of them hid themselves in the dens of the mountains and in the rocks of the mountains. Fall on us, they said to these mountains and rocks. Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne. Wait till you see what Jesus told some people. When Jesus was being taken to Mount Golgotha with the cross on his back, women followed him. A great company of people, women, which also bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus turned and said unto them, daughters of Jerusalem. He's speaking directly to the daughters of Jerusalem. He's addressing them. This is what I'm claiming. The people alive in that day were the generation he was preaching to. Weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. A generation is a people and their children alive at a given point in time. For behold, the days are coming in which you shall say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bear and the paps which never gave suck. Remember he said, pray that your flight be not in the winter. Pray that you don't give suck in those days, because escaping out of Jerusalem for your life is going to be hard with children. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us.